Have you ever noticed how almost overnight it seems a child you know just shoots up? Or their voice changes, maybe their friendships seem completely different? It's that time, isn't it? That period where everything feels like it's changing, sometimes, well, bewilderingly fast. Today, we're doing a deep dive into that incredible journey the human body takes, the shift from childhood right through to adulthood. We've got some really fascinating sources to help us navigate this.
Yeah, our goal here is really to pull out the most important bits of information about all those changes, the physical, the mental, the emotional, that really define adolescence and puberty. We want to help you understand not just what's happening during this huge shift, but also the why behind it all. It's all down to our amazing internal chemistry.
And honestly, I think you'll find some surprising things here. We'll look at everything from those growth spurts we mentioned, voice changes, and importantly, we'll clear up some myths that just seem to stick around. Get ready to connect some dots. So, okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's unpack this whole period. What exactly is this stage of growing up? Our sources call it adolescence.
Right. Adolescence is the sort of broader term for that whole period of life when the body's changing, leading ultimately towards reproductive maturity.
And there's a typical time frame for this.
Generally, yeah. It usually starts around age 11 and goes up to about 18 or 19. So basically the teen years. But it's really important to remember there's variation. It often kicks in a year or maybe two earlier for girls compared to boys. It's definitely not a rigid schedule.
Okay, so adolescence is the broad period, and then within that, there's puberty. What's the distinction there?
Puberty is more specific. It's the actual point or the phase during adolescence when the body becomes biologically capable of reproduction. That's the key marker, really.
The signal that adulthood isn't far off.
Precisely. And think back to those things you might notice, like a friend suddenly getting way taller or maybe a voice starting to crack. Those are the visible signs that puberty is starting. But it makes you wonder, okay, what else is going on? What other big changes are happening, maybe less obviously?
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's talk about some of the most, well, conspicuous changes. First off, that height increase. It feels so dramatic sometimes. Our sources say it's because the long bones, in the arms and legs are actually elongating, growing longer rapidly.
It really is a dramatic phase, and the stats are quite fascinating. Apparently, an average 11-year-old boy has already reached about 81% of his likely final height.
81%, wow.
Yeah. Well, an 11-year-old girl is often a bit further along, maybe around 88%. So girls tend to grow faster initially, but eventually both boys and girls usually reach their maximum height around 18 years old, give or take.
And that sometimes leads to that awkward phase, doesn't it? Where maybe arms or legs seem a bit too long for the rest of the body, kind of out of proportion for a while.
Exactly. Hands and feet can seem oversized too. It's like different parts are growing at slightly different rates. But the good news is the sources reassure us. Other parts catch up pretty quickly, leading to a proportionate adult body.
So genetics plays a big role in how tall you end up, obviously. But what else influences it?
What genetics sets the potential, definitely. But our sources really stress the crucial role of nutrition during these years. Eating the right kinds of food is absolutely vital for building strong bones and muscles. You need the right fuel for that kind of rapid construction.
Makes sense. So besides just getting taller, how else does the body shape itself differently during this time? Are there clear differences between boys and girls emerging?
Oh, absolutely. The overall body shape starts to change in quite distinct gender-specific ways. For boys, you typically see broader shoulders developing, a wider chest, and muscles become much more prominent.
Then for girls?
For girls, it's often the region below the waist that becomes wider. There are also changes in how body fat is distributed.
Okay, and then there's the voice. That's a big one, especially for boys. That cracking voice phase. What's actually happening there?
It's all about the voice box, or the larynx. It starts to grow significantly during puberty. In boys, this growth is usually much more pronounced, sometimes becoming visible as a bulge in the throat, what we commonly call the Adam's apple.
Right. So that growth causes the voice to change.
Exactly. Girls generally keep a higher-pitched voice, while boys develop that deeper, more resonant tone. And interestingly, sometimes during that growth spurt in boys, the muscles controlling the larynx can get a bit, well, uncoordinated temporarily.
Ah, hence the cracking.
Precisely. It can lead to hoarseness or that unpredictable cracking for maybe a few days or weeks before the voice settles into its new lower pitch. It usually sorts itself out.
Okay, another thing, many teenagers experience skin changes, pimples, acne. What's the link to puberty?
It's down to increased activity in two types of glands. the sweat glands and the sebaceous glands, which produce oil.
So more sweat and more oil.
Basically, yes. That increased activity means more sweating, and the extra oil can sometimes clog pores, leading to acne and pimples, often on the face. This is a very common part of adolescence.
Now, alongside these outward changes, there are really fundamental developments happening internally, right? With the reproductive organs.
Absolutely crucial developments. In males, the testes and penis develop fully, and importantly, the testes begin producing sperm. In females, the ovaries get larger and eggs start to mature and are released periodically. This marks the readiness for reproduction.
And this ties into something called secondary sexual characteristics. What are those?
Good question. These are features that help distinguish males from females physically, but they aren't directly involved in the mechanics of reproduction itself.
So like outward signs of maturity.
Kind of. For girls, the main one is breast development. For boys, it includes facial hair growth, mustaches, beards, and sometimes hair growth on the chest.
Yeah.
And for both boys and girls, hair starts to grow under the arms and in the pubic area. These are all signals of sexual maturation.
It's amazing how many things change, all seemingly at once. How does the body coordinate all this? What's the master control system?
Hormones.
Yeah.
It all comes down to hormones. They are the body's chemical messengers orchestrating this whole symphony of change.
Okay, so what exactly are hormones? Our sources define them as chemical substances.
That's right. They're secreted by what are called endocrine glands. These are glands that release hormones directly into the bloodstream. No ducts needed.
And then they travel.
Exactly. They travel through the blood to specific target sites elsewhere in the body, and when they arrive, they trigger particular changes or actions. It's like sending a specific instruction to a specific department.
So which hormones are the key players in puberty?
The main ones are the sex hormones. In males, the testes produce testosterone. That's the primary male hormone, driving changes like facial hair, the deeper voice, muscle growth. In females, the ovaries produce estrogen. Estrogen is the key female hormone responsible for things like breast development and the maturation of the reproductive system.
And is the production of testosterone and estrogen just automatic? Or is something controlling them?
No, it's controlled. There's a higher command center. The production of these sex hormones is actually regulated by another incredibly important endocrine gland.
Which one is that?
It's called the pituitary gland. It's tiny, located right at the base of the brain. It's often called the master gland because it controls so many other hormonal processes.
The master gland. Okay. So it tells the testes and ovaries when to produce their hormones.
Essentially, yes. But the pituitary does even more. It also stimulates other crucial endocrine glands. For example, it influences the thyroid gland, which affects metabolism, and the pancreas, which produces insulin for blood sugar control. It even produces growth hormone itself.
Wow, it really is central to everything.
It really is. It highlights just how interconnected all these bodily systems are, especially during a period of such rapid change.
And get this, our sources mention hormones control transformations in other animals too, like frogs.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Think about a tadpole changing into a frog, that metamorphosis. That's controlled by a hormone called thyroxine, produced by the frog's thyroid gland.
And just like in humans, where the thyroid needs iodine.
Exactly. The tadpole needs enough iodine in the water for its thyroxine to work properly and allow it to become a frog. It shows how fundamental these hormonal mechanisms are across different species.
That's incredible. Okay, so once puberty hits and the body is capable of reproduction, how long does that capability last? Is it lifelong?
That's an important question. There's actually the difference between males and females here. The ability to produce gametes, so sperm in males and eggs in females, generally lasts much longer in males.
And for females, what's a typical time frame?
For females, the reproductive phase usually begins at puberty, say around 10 to 12 years old, and it typically continues until about age 45 to 50.
And during that phase, there's the menstrual cycle. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So roughly every month, about every 28 to 30 days, one egg, or ovum, matures and is released from one of the ovaries. This is ovulation. At the same time, the lining of the uterus thickens up quite a bit. It's basically preparing a place, getting ready in case a fertilized egg arrives.
And what if fertilization doesn't happen?
If the egg isn't fertilized, then that thickened uterine lining, along with its blood vessels and the unfertilized egg itself, isn't needed. So it's shed from the body. That shedding process is what we call menstruation, or a period.
Our sources mention specific terms for the start and end of this phase?
Yes, the very first menstrual flow a girl experiences is called menarche. And the natural end of menstruation, usually around age 45-50, is called menopause. It's also worth noting, especially early on, the menstrual cycle can be somewhat irregular before it settles into a more predictable pattern.
Okay, switching gears slightly, but still related. How is the sex of a baby determined? Is it chance?
Not chance, it's genetics. It's determined right at the moment the egg is fertilized, and it all comes down to chromosomes.
Chromosomes, right, inside our cells.
Exactly. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes in almost every cell. One of those pairs is the sex chromosomes. We call them X and Y. Females have two X chromosomes, so XX. Males have one X and one Y, chromosome XY.
Okay, XX for female, XY for male. How does that play out with eggs and sperm?
Here's the key difference. An unfertilized egg always contains one X chromosome. Always. But sperm are different. About half of them carry an X chromosome, and the other half carry a Y chromosome.
Ah, so the sperm determines the outcome.
Precisely. If a sperm carrying an X chromosome fertilizes the egg, which already has an X, the result is XX, a female. But if a sperm carrying a Y chromosome fertilizes the egg, the result is XY, a male.
So biologically speaking, it's the father's contribution, the sperm, that determines the sex of the baby.
Absolutely. And this is so important because, as our sources point out, it completely debunks a very harmful and persistent myth.
The myth that the mother is somehow responsible.
Exactly. The idea that the mother determines the sex of the child is scientifically wrong and, frankly, completely unfair. The biological determination comes from the father's sperm.
That's a really crucial point to understand. Okay, moving beyond the pure biology, adolescence is also a time that requires real attention to overall health and well-being, doesn't it?
Definitely. All this rapid growth and change puts extra demands on the body. Nutrition, for instance, becomes even more critical. A balanced diet is essential. You need enough protein for building tissues, carbohydrates, and fats for energy, plus all the necessary vitamins and minerals.
So what does a balanced diet look like in practice during these years?
Well, simple, wholesome meals are often best. Things like the typical Indian meal, roti, or rice, dal, lentils, vegetables, that's a great foundation. Milk is fantastic. It's packed with nutrients. Fruits are important too. And getting enough iron is key, especially for girls.
Where do you get iron?
Things like leafy green vegetables, jaggery, meat, citrus fruits, which help with iron absorption, and amla or Indian gooseberry, these all help build blood.
And what about snacks? Teenagers love snacks.
Yes. But here's a caution from the sources. Things like chips, packaged snacks, tinned foods. While they might be tasty, they often lack real nutritional value. They should absolutely not replace proper meals. You need nutrient-dense food to fuel all that growth.
Makes sense. What about hygiene? We mentioned the sweat glands earlier.
Right. With increased sweating, personal hygiene becomes more important. Daily bathing is pretty much essential to prevent body odor and just feel clean. And it's important to wash all parts of the body properly every day to avoid potential bacterial infections.
Is there specific advice for girls regarding menstruation?
Yes, maintaining cleanliness during menstruation is very important. Using clean sanitary pads or tampons, changing them regularly, say every 4 to 5 hours, or more often if needed. Keeping track of the cycle can also be helpful.
Okay, nutrition, hygiene. What about physical activity?
Hugely important. Our sources really encourage it. Simple things like walking, playing outdoors in the fresh air, it keeps the body fit and healthy. Getting regular exercise, maybe playing sports, or just being active, is beneficial for everyone during adolescence. Good for the body, good for the mind too.
Now, there's a more serious topic our sources touch on, drugs.
Yes, unfortunately, adolescence can be a vulnerable time. There can be peer pressure, feelings of insecurity, and the sources are very clear. Drugs are addictive. Trying them just once can lead to wanting more and more. They cause serious long-term damage to health and overall well-being.
The message is basically, say no.
Absolutely. Unless it's a medicine prescribed by a doctor for a genuine health reason, drugs should be avoided.
And connected to this sometimes is the issue of HIV and AIDS.
Right. The sources explain how the HIV virus can be transmitted. One way is through sharing needles for injecting drugs if one person is infected. Other routes include from an infected mother to her baby, sometimes through breastfeeding, and through sexual contact with an infected person. It's vital information for staying safe.
The sources also bring up the issue of adolescent pregnancy and early marriage.
Yes, they note that in many places there are legal minimum ages for marriage, often 18 for girls and 21 for boys.
And there are good reasons for that, right?
Very strong reasons. Teenagers, both physically and mentally, are often just not prepared for pregnancy and parenthood. Early marriage and motherhood can lead to health complications for both the mother and the child. Plus, it can drastically limit the young woman's future opportunities, like education and career, and cause significant emotional distress.
So, we've covered a lot of the science. Hopefully, this knowledge helps clear up some common misconceptions.
That's the idea. Being armed with factual scientific information empowers you to see through myths and outdated beliefs.
What are some specific myths our sources suggest we can confidently discard?
Well, there's that completely unfounded idea that a girl could get pregnant just by looking at a boy during her period.
Right, definitely not true.
Then there's the one we already discussed, blaming the mother for the sex of the child. Absolutely wrong.
And any others.
Another one mentioned is the taboo some cultures have about girls not being allowed in the kitchen or doing certain activities during menstruation. There's no scientific basis for that either. It's about hygiene, not about being unclean in some mystical way.
We have certainly covered a huge amount today, haven't we? From those first visible signs of change through the hormonal controls right up to health and well-being.
It really has been a deep dive. It
Yeah.
just shows that growing up, adolescence, it's this incredibly complex, but ultimately natural and quite amazing process, all orchestrated from within our own bodies.
And I think the key takeaway is that these changes, while sometimes confusing or maybe even a bit scary, are a completely normal part of becoming an adult. Understanding them hopefully helps reduce any insecurity and builds confidence.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you to consider. Now that you have this deeper understanding of the science behind adolescence, how could our societies, our cultures, perhaps do a better job of supporting young people as they navigate these really profound changes?